Well, good morning, everybody. Well, this is not the view out the window. Uh, if you don't believe me, this is the curtains that my wife made as a COVID project to sort of keep the winter out. They're insulated curtains and remind us of days that are not the winter. And I thought I'm tired of filming inside. It's too cold for the camera, but I thought we could use a little reminder of outside and what life is going to be like in a few months when it's not winter anymore, and maybe the pandemic's better, and maybe we can go outside and enjoy the waterfront and the beach. And yeah, but that's not the truth of what's going on out behind these curtains. They are reminding me of other times and insulating me from the cold, but it's not the truth. And that's my tie-in to our topic today, which is Christianity is not truth. We're on the final chapter of Douglas John Hall's What Christianity Is Not, and he chooses to close on the fact that Christianity is not the truth. We've got one more week. We're going to tie it up next week and talk about the conclusion, but today we're talking about truth. And if we're going to talk about truth in 2021 in the West, we need to talk about reductionism and modernism. The modern period sort of is from the end of the French Revolution to World War II is generally the dates that we toss out. It's what the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution and everything led to. And it's been a period of just immense growth in the West and immense advancement. And at the expense of many things. You know, the Industrial Revolution came at the expense of the current climate crisis. You know, but anyway, it's a time of immense growth and learning and things like that. And that's built on this idea of reductionism, which is any problem can be reduced down to its parts. And that's really helpful because, you know, what's the old saying? How do you eat an elephant? And the question is, or the answer is, one bite at a time. And if you have to deal with a big problem, you break it down into the small parts, right? You don't build a house. You put up the foundation, you put in the floor, you put up the walls, you put on the roof, the siding. You know, you do it all in little steps. And that's kind of reductionism. And it's really helpful. It's how academia has worked and science. And, you know, that's just how our culture has worked for a long time. And it's gotten us really far, really fast. But there's a problem with reductionism, and that is that it leads to this belief that if we can just reduce far enough, if we're disciplined enough, if we work hard enough, we can grasp truth. And that's informed the way that we view truth. It's also created an obsession with truth. Doug Hall uses this example that he can't know for sure that his wife loves him. She can say that she loves him. She can show that she loves him, but it's not something that he can definitively prove. And I think he can make that case about many things. Like, I can't know what these curtains are made of. I can just trust what was on the label and whoever wrote it. They could have written something completely different. And, you know, I probably wouldn't know. I have to take their word for it. And that's kind of how knowledge works. Like, to take the burden of understanding everything around us from a molecular level to a macro level is just so far beyond our capability that it's an incredible burden. And it's a burden that we've kind of taken on and leads to all kinds of problems. For one, you can't say anything for sure. And the other thing is, if you can't say anything for sure, then it means that your truth might be different than my truth, and it depends on who defines it, and then it becomes in conflict. And we're seeing that happen right now. That's why our society is so fractured, is, you know, there's a reason not to believe every fact we come across. And that means that we can substitute our own. That's where fake news comes from. That's where this populism business comes from. It sort of traces its roots back to reductionism and our understanding of truth. It's not healthy. And it seems like we've believed in truth that way forever. And in some senses we have, because reductionism in some ways goes back to the Greek philosophers that were predated Jesus by a little bit and spoke the language that the Gospels are written in. So we're using a very philosophical language, Greek, to explain the Gospels. But really it's only about 200 years old. In terms of widespread cultural adoption, it's really only about 200 years old. And that seems like a long time, but it's 10% of Christian history. That's it. The rest of our history, we have understood truth as something else. And different things over the years. Each sort of epoch in our history is going to have a different understanding of truth. But the one that's really important to this conversation today is the Hebrew understanding of truth, because Jesus was a Hebrew, the disciples were Hebrew, and that's the understanding that they would have brought to it. Even if they wrote the Gospels down in Greek and had to use this very technical philosophical language, they would have had the understanding of the Hebrew truth. And the Hebrew truth was relational. And that might sort of break our brain a little bit. When we think about truth, we think about cold, hard facts. How is truth relational? And Paul uses, the example of his wife again. So he says that if you want to get to know him, the wrong person to ask is his wife. If you want someone to be able to say, Douglas John Hall is this, you go talk to someone 10 steps removed. Someone like me that doesn't know him but has read the book and could say, I think he's this, this, and this. If you ask his wife, you're going to get just inundated with information because she's so close to him that, she knows how much she doesn't know. And she knows all the nuances and the ins and outs and etc. And the Hebrew understanding of truth would say, if you want to know Doug John Hall, go talk to him. Have a relationship with him. Get to know him. You will never know the truth of Douglas John Hall, but because you are in relationship with Douglas John Hall and you're talking with Douglas John Hall, then you'll get far closer to the truth than anybody that says they know him definitively. That's relational truth. And it makes a lot of sense coming from that culture, because these were people that grew up in the desert. They wandered. They would spend long times walking together and probably chatting, and they would spend nights around the campfire. And this was a very extremely relational culture. And it makes all the sense in the world that that's how they would have understood truth. And you can see this coming to a head in the scripture passage for this week. When Jesus was arrested and brought before Pilate, there was this problem. Jesus hadn't done anything wrong, and Pilate knew that. And so he was sort of trying to get to a truth, or maybe a better word is a fact, that he'd either done or hadn't done something that he could be put to death for. And so he sort of said, they say that you're king, and Jesus says, well, I'm king of another world. Right? Like Pilate was talking facts, Jesus was talking theology, and sort of relational. It was something that you would need to have a dialogue for. And Pilate just finally threw up his hands. What is truth? Right? He was looking for something to release Jesus on, and Jesus didn't give him that. And so here's Pilate with the Greco-Roman, because he was Roman, Greek, that Greco-Roman understanding of truth, the philosophical reductionist understanding of truth, and then Jesus, which is different. And it was the reductionist understanding of truth that actually led to Jesus dying. Whereas the relational truth would have led somewhere else. So relational truth is dialogue. If you want to get to know the mystery that we call God, you have a relationship with God. You reflect on the stories, you spend time in prayer, and you're constantly reevaluating and learning more, and then going back and revisiting what you thought you knew based on what you just learned, and you're in this constant this constant circle of growing understanding and relationality. That's relational truth. And Hall says that means that we are people that are oriented towards truth. You know, there's things that are immediate gratification, and those are not true. And there's things that are, lifetime work. And those things, he says, that can't be truth either, but it's oriented towards the truth. It's facing truth. So, you know, if you wanted to get a quick but false statement on who Douglas John Hall was, you go ask another academic that's read all his stuff. And they can say, well, Douglas John Hall is these 5 things, right? And it's true, but it's not true. That's not Douglas John Hall. But if you really want to get to know him, you go have coffee with him and you talk with him. And over the years, you get to know him more and more. You're turned away from that falseness towards the sense of truth. And to just sort of take it a step further, that reductionist sense of truth is very much one of power. If we name things, if we define things, then it gives whoever's naming and defining the power to say that you understand or you don't. You're in or you're out. It's a power thing. And that's kind of, as Christians who are sort of overly concerned with whether we're saved or not, our tendency is to do that. We like to define things, and we like to say who's in and out, and we like to, it's a power move, whether we see it that way or not. It's an expression of power. And that, when we define something, when we say this is truth, Christianity is truth, that means that we're moving further away from truth. And Hall says that as people that know that God is far bigger than we could ever comprehend, we should be the first ones to say that we are not truth, even though we're usually the first to say that we are. So Christianity should be a group of people that are oriented towards a relational sense of truth in the Hebrew term. We see this mysterious deity being whatever that we call God, and we want to understand better. We want to understand the truths of the universe. And instead of grasping onto them, we should be having relationship with them. You know, Jesus said, I am the truth. And from a reductionist perspective, we want to say we should be able to study Jesus and boil him down to this truth. But what he's saying is, if you want to know the truth about God, get to know me. Have a relationship with me. It's a lifetime journey. And we're going to be wrong. You know, that's just, it's like this book that is about negative theology. We can't say what things are, so maybe we can just talk about it. Maybe we can say what they're not. Maybe we can be in dialogue. So Christians are people that are turned away from the things that are false, the things that are sort of, like that person 10 steps away that says, Doug John Hall is this. And they're people that have turned away from that and oriented themselves or turned towards truth, which is this constant relationship, this constant discovery, this constant dance. And I think that's something that's really beautiful. It's something that we've lost over the years. But it's something that's very beautiful. So let's be in relationship with God. Let's be in dialogue with God. And let's orient ourselves towards truth rather than trying to define it and grasp it.